Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, I'm still not very well. Hopefully, I'll be okay tomorrow. I am on the mend. But I wanted to just talk through what I'd like you to do today. um, we're going to be working through the PowerPoint that I will be working through with you in class anyway. You need to get into your pairs, is fine. But make sure you're working with someone that's you can work well with. This is not a messing around lesson. It's really important. It's the end of this particular text, and we need to do justice to this text and to the work that I've set out for you. I want you to complete this work so we're ready to go through the answers and have a quick discussion on these things next lesson. The first thing, the first thing I want us to do is have a look at the baby and what the baby represents here. So I'd like you to write some answers to these two questions, please. What is it about the baby in particular that represents hope? Why is it such a fitting symbol for hope? And I think that if you think a lot about the generational element of this text, how things have moved down from Frank to Fonny to the baby, and think about what Baldwin's trying to say about that from a generational perspective. I'm not trying to give too much away there. Then there's another little slide here about hopelessness, which is obviously contrasted with the baby. We have hope and hopelessness juxtaposed here. And obviously, it gets too much to Frank, the thought of his son being in prison and in being unable to protect and help. And we talked a lot about gender roles and traditional gender roles here, and the idea of the father as the protector here is obviously very pertinent, and is unable to fulfill that role because of the injustices in the society in which he lives. Again, just make a couple of notes here on these little prompt questions. The first major task I'd like us to do is this, and again, you can do this in a group. I don't mind. Just make sure that you take a copy and add it to your own notes. I think it's really ineffective when people use shared documents and then just keep them as shared documents. You need to take a copy and then add it to your own notes so you've got your own version. So everything's just in one place. I want you to think about the negative impact that discrimination and racism has had on all of our characters. All of their lives have been ripped apart in various different ways. And I would like you to consider, I've given you some ideas here just to get you started, but looking at the family and so extended family with Frank as well, what has it cost them? What has it hurt? What has it affected them? In what ways? And I bet you can get a really big list together there. So that's the first big task. The second big task is to think about Frank's death, and we have 5 questions here that I'd like you to answer in detail, please. He decides to drive his car away into some remote woods where he takes his own life. The tragic news is revealed on the very last page of the novel. So question 1 is, why do you think Frank chose to take his own life? 2, how is Frank's demise foreshadowed in part 2 of the novel? And why do you think Baldwin did this? We're going to talk a lot about foreshadowing, especially next year when we do tragedy. There's a little clue. 3, how do you think the reader would respond to the death of Frank? Consider specific emotions that they would go through and specific thoughts. Don't just say sad. That's not at all acceptable. 4, why do you think Baldwin is trying to communicate? What do you think he's trying to communicate through the death of Frank? And then 5, why do you think Baldwin chose for Frank to die at the very point where Tish is about to give birth? Think about that overlap and think about generations like we talked about before. Then I'd like you to think about the final paragraph of the novel. Fonny is working on the wood, on the stone, whistling, smiling, and from far away but coming nearer, the baby cries and 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 cries like it means to wake the dead. It's a very unusual ending. And is this real? Is it not real? Is it symbolic? Is it part of a dream? there's lots of possible interpretations. I'd like you to have a discussion and work out what your interpretations are, and then be ready to share that next time. And the final task, which you might have to finish for homework, is just a plenary task. Okay, and it's just basically a reflection. So I want you to think about the title, Zion. Is that ironic or is it hopeful? The ending. What plot threads are unresolved? There's a lot that we don't know at the end of this novel. And why do you think it is that Baldwin decided to have an ambiguous, unresolved ending rather than a conclusive and definitive one? That's actually very important. And we'll talk about that next lesson. And then finally, just on a personal note, I'd like to know what the 3 most significant things you have learned from studying this text. And just be honest in your response, please. Just to finish with here, you don't have to do any tasks on this at all. You don't need to do that. But there's just a nice clip there. There's lots of clips of James Baldwin speaking. He's very intelligent, very articulate, very engaging speaker. And you can have a look at this video here. And it's just to, again, just give some colour to the person behind the books that we've been, the book and text that we've been reading. I'd like you to just have a look at that video. Okay, so there's quite a bit to do. Just to recap here, short little notes on the symbolism of the baby, juxtaposed with the despair of Frank. This table to complete, you can do that in groups. 5 questions on Frank's death, thinking about the ending, and then you may have to complete this for homework. See how you get on for time. You have to work quickly. These final questions, all right, and we'll discuss these next lesson. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon.